Hi there, this is Mo Volans for Point Blank Music School, and we're currently taking a look at the excellent Final Touch app for the iPad by Positive Grid. Now, in any fully featured mastering system, you're going to expect a Maximiser. This is essentially a brick wall limiter that allows you to add perceived volume and extra punch to your mixes, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at right now. So we're now working on this track inside Final Touch, and I've just got some simple EQ applied and a little bit of stereo imaging. Now we can see by the waveform at the top that we're not all the way to 0 dB. This is a typical pre-master in that we've got some headroom, we've got some space in between where the loudest point of our mix is and 0 dB. So we're not achieving full volume here, we're not achieving the highest level of perceived volume that we can. Now of course we don't want to go too far here because we don't want to remove all of our dynamic range and we don't want to make the track squashed. But what we do want to do is really get the best out of the track and ensure that it's at least competing with other tracks that are going to be played out or other tracks you're going to hear next to it on, say, a compilation. So if we go ahead and play the track in sort of its loudest point, we can see these 2 points quite clearly, and we go to our Maximiser, which is essentially a brick wall limiter. This will allow us to get the most perceived volume out of it without crushing it, and we can do that in a few ways. At the minute we've got our ceiling set to 0 dB, but if we take the ceiling down a little bit, this will ensure that we don't get any clips on the master output. Now if we reduce the threshold slowly, you'll start to see some gain reduction in the attenuation meter here to the right. Now this means that we are pushing gain into the brick wall limiter and ensuring that the peaks are reaching our ceiling limit. And every time the peak reaches the ceiling limit, we get some gain reduction. So you can see we're getting about 4.7 decibels of reduction, and that will increase perceived volume. It will reduce dynamic range. Now, like I said before, you don't want to go too far with this, because if you do, you can see already on the master output here, we've reduced the dynamic range, and we will reduce the dynamics of our track. So there won't be as much air being pushed around, there won't be as much difference between the loud and the quiet parts of the track. But you do get volume. So there's a payoff and there's a balance to be struck here. So I would suggest a maximum of about 5 dB, and you want to watch the RMS level. You know, about a -10 is pretty reasonable for sort of dance and electronic music. If you take it too far, you can start to add distortion. So be pretty careful, and then you can fine tune the release, the recovery time of the limiter to match your material. Now, once you've set all this up and you're quite happy with the sound you're getting and you've increased the perceived volume and you've got the limiter set up correctly, you can move to the right and start to look at the dithering options. Now we're going to look at this more a little bit when we export, but this is where you would set the output depth. You know, if you're already working in 24-bit, you would want to go to 16. We can set the dithering type, and dithering is a type of mathematics that allows us to move from higher to lower bit depths, the dither amount and the noise shaping type that the dithering uses. So once we've got all this set up, we would be ready to export, but there's no need to worry too much about that because we're going to hit the export settings in the 7th video under Advanced Features number 1. Now next up, we're going to take a look at something that's maybe not the most common processor in a mastering chamber, and maybe something you've not thought of using, and that's a mastering reverb. Luckily, Final Touch has an excellent mastering reverb, and I'm going to show you it in a bit of a different style track. I'm going to show you it in a heavy rock track, and we're going to see it working in action.